All right, let's talk about a seismic shift that could be coming to global politics. Right around 2026, we're looking at a whole new American foreign policy, one that basically throws out the old playbook of alliances and shared values. Instead, it sees the world through the cold, hard logic of a business deal.
So it really boils down to this one big question, right? What if the entire world just became one giant business deal? What happens when diplomacy isn't about handshakes and treaties anymore, but about hard-nosed negotiation? When your closest allies are suddenly treated like, well, like clients? And what if national security itself suddenly has a price tag?
And this really lays out the core change perfectly. On one side, you've got the world order we've known since World War II, built on alliances, multilateral deals, this idea of shared values. And on the other side, a total teardown of that system. It's all about one-on-one, bilateral deals. Forget shared values. It's all about national interest. And global stability? Nope, it's America first, plain and simple.
Okay, so this new worldview gets a name, the Trump Corollary. And here's the best way to think about it. You know the old Monroe Doctrine, right? The one from the 1800s that basically told Europe, hey, the Americas are our backyard, stay out. Well, the Trump Corollary takes that idea and puts it on steroids for the 21st century. It expands that backyard to a massive sphere of influence, from the Arctic all the way down to the Antarctic. This sets the stage for some incredibly bold moves.
So how does this doctrine actually play out in the real world? Well, let's dive into our first test case, the Arctic. Specifically, the push to acquire Greenland from Denmark. Now, this might sound like just a huge real estate deal, right? But it's about so much more. This is about controlling the future of the Arctic.
And you can see the strategy laid out here is just purely transactional. It's a mix of military posturing and raw economic muscle. The U.S. wants to expand its military footprint, but instead of just negotiating, it's tying that demand directly to trade. The message to Denmark and the EU is incredibly blunt. Give us what we want on defense, or we'll slap you with tariffs up to 25%. I mean, this is literally treating national security like a high-stakes business negotiation.
Okay, from the icy Arctic, let's shift gears to a major flashpoint in the Middle East, Iran. By early 2026, the country is in the middle of its biggest crisis since the revolution back in '79. And you guessed it, this new transactional doctrine is being applied to push a regime that's already teetering on the brink.
And man, this crisis just exploded out of nowhere. It starts in late 2025 with protests over the economy. The currency is collapsing. But within weeks, this isn't about money anymore. It morphs into a full-blown nationwide uprising demanding regime change. The government's response? Swift and absolutely brutal. They shut down the entire internet, and then the crackdown begins.
And the human cost? It's just staggering. We're talking more than 6,000 civilians killed, and that's a conservative estimate, in just the first few weeks. Just let that number sink in. Over 6,000 people, and that doesn't even count the tens of thousands more who are rounded up and detaining.
So how does the U.S. see this? Well, they don't see it as just another protest. Officials are literally calling this a Gorbachev moment. A once-in-a-generation chance to help topple the regime from the inside, kind of like what happened with the Soviet Union. And this isn't just talk. The statement is backed with a very clear, very chilling threat. All options are locked and loaded.
All right, now for our third test case, Taiwan. And this is where the transactional nature of this new doctrine becomes crystal clear. For decades, the U.S. security guarantee has been a cornerstone of policy in the region. Now, it's being reframed as, well, as a service, a protection service. And like any service, it comes with a very, very big invoice.
Just look at these numbers. This is the stark demand being made. Right now, Taiwan spends about 2.6% of its GDP on defense. The U.S. demand? That they jack that up to a massive 10%. We're not talking about a small increase here. This is nearly quadrupling their defense budget. And that's the price tag for continued American protection.
So the message couldn't be clearer, right? If you want the American security umbrella, you have to pay for it. The old days of strategic ambiguity are over, gone. This is a business deal. Plain and simple. Protection isn't just a part of being an ally anymore. It's a premium service, and the bill is due. And finally, let's turn to our fourth case, Ukraine. The goal here is to forge a peace deal and end the war. But the driving motivation is to stop the drain on American resources. And the approach is to get that deal done fast, even if it means pushing Ukraine to accept some incredibly painful, permanent concessions. And this comparison really shows you the major roadblocks. On territory, the U.S. is proposing Russia gets to keep the 5 regions it occupies. NATO membership for Ukraine, that's off the table permanently. But the real sticking point, the biggest hurdle, is security guarantees.
The US wants foreign troops on the ground as peacekeepers to make sure the deal holds. Russia's position? Absolutely not. No foreign troops, period.
Okay, so we've seen this doctrine in action across the globe, from the Arctic to Iran to Taiwan and Ukraine. The big question is, what's the price tag for all this? What does all this high-stakes maneuvering mean for the global economy and maybe even more importantly, for your wallet?
Well, analysts have pretty much mapped out 4 ways this could go in the first part of 2026. The most likely scenario, the baseline, has about a 45% chance. That's where things are tense, but they're managed. But look at the other possibilities. There's a 1 in 4 chance that Ukraine talks collapse, sending investors running for safety. A 1 in 5 chance that the Iran conflict blows up and we get a major oil shock. And then there's the big one, the tail risk. A 10% chance of global panic if China decides to blockade Taiwan. The risks are very, very real.
So let's say we stick to that baseline scenario, the most likely one. You'd see markets stay pretty stable. But here's the really crucial takeaway, something you really need to pay attention to. Look at what happens during those moments of crisis, those flare-ups. Investors are expected to run to gold, not the US dollar, as their preferred safe haven. Now that might sound subtle, but it's a huge deal. It signals a real erosion of trust in the dollar as the world's ultimate safety.
When you put all these pieces together, it points to a brand new reality. We're talking about a world where the very foundations of international order, institutions like the UN, shared norms, all of that, are being challenged and replaced by a completely commercialized, transactional approach to power. And if you want the most extreme example of this, look no further than the proposed Board of Peace. Think of it as an alternative to the UN Security Council, but with a wild, radical twist. It's completely pay-to-play. Any country with $1 billion to spare can just buy a permanent seat at the table. Diplomacy is no longer a right, it's a members-only club, and the entry fee is $1 billion. And all of this really leaves us with one final massive question to chew on. In a world that runs on transactions, what is the value of an alliance? As we shift from a system of partnerships to a system of payments, what have we really gained? And maybe more importantly, what have we lost along the way?